Welcome to the Bell Midnight. In this episode, we'll be talking about mysterious disappearances in the forests of North America. I'm your host, Joseph Michaels, joined by John Mack. Let's get right into it.
So originally, I had been clued into an interesting little legal issue that's people have been talking about a little more recently, involving national park system that's located between Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana.
Right, that's the dead zone, isn't it?
The dead zone, yeah, that was I initially wanted to do this show on it, but there's not really there's some interesting information about a lawyer who's currently in a fight over something out there. A lot of legislation, pending and stuff like that, or not legislation. A lot of court cases pending, judgments that haven't come out, and things like that. But the biggest issue I had with that was when I was trying to look up that case, I was running into a lot of it's just a lot of legalese. It's a lot of things of that nature. A lot of that stuff's not available because it's in a federal court system, and the federal court system is a disgusting mess. Basically, I had to abandon that idea. But I like the whole national parks, focus. I'm sure everyone over the years has seen the material from David Paulides, who's arguably the best investigator in this particular in that particular realm.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, anybody who wants to check him out, I highly recommend his material. The more exposure that man gets, the better. He's a former police detective. He's been on Coast to Coast. He's been on so many shows, so many podcasts, from the mundane podcasts, like sports shows, all the way up to Coast to Coast. He's been on it all. Covered a lot of ground, did a lot of interviews, a lot of freedom of information requests, stonewalled by the park system, stonewalled by the feds, stonewalled by the FBI, stonewalled by everybody.
I actually remember when he was on Coast to Coast a long time ago, I think when he wrote his first book. And he was talking about his requests for the Freedom of Information Acts. And when he first put them forward, and he was specifically sent requests for gaining information about missing people disappearing in the parks. The response was, well, you can't have that information unless you're a published author. And he goes, well, haha, I am a published author. So they come back and they say, well, you need to have released 3 books. Aha, I have released 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
So then they come back and say, well, it has to be in a certain number of libraries across the country. They just refused to give him anything.
It's just new rules every time. And as I recall, I eventually broke through all those barriers, and it was time for them to give him the information. And they said, well, it's going to cost you $1 million to print that all out.
Wow.
Yeah, they told him that. And I don't recall that's how the Freedom of Information Act works. I don't recall the section in the Freedom of Information Act that says that you have to be a published author with 3 books.
Right.
I really don't recall that particular piece of legislation. Perhaps I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm just mistaken, but it seems like the federal government's just an absolute worthless bunch of shitheads. Excuse my language here, but they serve no purpose. They're utterly useless, and the only thing they do manage to do is avoid working when they can, and not their jobs. The only things they're really good at. So anyway, I'm going through all this stuff with Paulides over the years. I've seen all this stuff. There was a couple of cases he talked about, and he's probably talked about everything I have here today, but I'm going to go over them. There's a lot of people still haven't heard a lot of this. A lot of people still haven't heard of him. So I'm going to talk about a few light ones. And the first case that I came across, and there's unusual circumstances that usually surround missing children, or even missing people in a lot of cases, in the woods. There's a lot of cases of lost time. People hiking along happily and then just having a strange fight or flight response.
Right. When you said the lost time, it's commonly referred to as instances of missing time, along with the Oz effect, where everything around them just goes silent.
In these particular cases, I've heard of a few stories. There is famously the skier who was located in New York, and he decided he was going to go for one more run. He told his friends he'd be right back, and he disappeared. They conducted numerous searches. 6 days later, he ends up in California.
Hang on a second. Where did he go hiking at?
New York.
New York, and he ended up in California.
Apparently, this gentleman, he's a 49-year-old skier, and he was found 6 days later in California. Specifically, His name is Konstantinos Danny Philippidis, a firefighter from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. He has no recollection of what happened after he was reported missing during a ski trip while he was on the Whiteface Mountain a week earlier on Wednesday, February 7th. Now, this is a week after that they're talking to him. Essentially, he went out for another run on the course, and he's just gone. He's just gone.
Disappears.
Disappears. 6 days later, he's in California. He has no idea how he got there.
Oh, so they found him alive in California.
Yeah, he's wandering around an airport.
That's weird.
He has no idea what happened. He's obviously not trying to run or escape from anybody because he came right back home.
Oh, I've heard of a case like this before where people will enter a fugue state and they have like a personality disconnect where they have like an alternate personality but they're not aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other personality will just take over and just go do stuff. Like they'll leave their wallet behind and everything and just wander off. And then a couple days later, they'll snap to and they have no idea how they got somewhere. But it's like crazy, crazy rare.
Yeah, crazy rare. And his story apparently is when deputies questioned him, he told them that he remembered very little. But he did think that he may have suffered a hand injury, although nothing was apparent. You know what I mean? They had EMS check him out and things like that. They didn't really see any kind of trauma. But he does think that maybe, and in his words, he was riding in a big rig style truck and slept a lot in the sleeper cab. Yeah, which would imply that he either hitchhiked or got kidnapped. Who kidnaps a group?
What year was this again?
This was when it was Wednesday, February 7th, 2018.
2018, and he hitchhiked in a truck?
A truck apparently that's going all the way across the country from New York to California. How often does that happen?
There's runs that do it, but I mean, still, here's what really blows me away is what trucker picked him up and drove him across the country?
And just let him sleep in the cab like that?
Yeah, you sleep in the bunk.
Yeah, and that's it. And he only thinks that's what happened because he doesn't actually remember it.
That's true.
He's only inclined to say that. He ended up in the, ultimately being questioned by the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department. And this interview was conducted right after, between the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department and the Post Standard of Syracuse. I guess they called in or sent somebody, probably didn't send somebody down there. But he has this missing time. Now, I've read other stories. David Paulides covers a lot of this stuff where you've got hunters out in the woods and they instantly tense up and can't move. They just can't move.
Panic.
There's hunters that say, yeah, panic. And there was a particular testimonial by an Army veteran who says that when he was out in the woods, he just suddenly got that feeling, stopped, was paralyzed, and he felt his fight or flight flipping between the two options. Rapid fire. Like it couldn't decide which one to pick.
What's interesting about that is I've heard a story that said, when that happens to you, that means Pan is nearby. And Pan is short for panic, because it's supposed to be like a pagan forest entity of some sort. And this is something that actually did happen to me once.
What, the panic thing? I've never experienced it.
I went down into the woods behind my house where I used to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my gun with me because I was down there doing stuff and whatnot.
No, you should never go in the woods without a gun. You should never.
I was, and the thing is, I've been in these woods a million times. I know them like the back of my hand.
Dude, we were in those woods when we were 6 years old.
For some reason, all of a sudden, it was just like sheer terror. For no reason. Like, sunny day, nothing's going on, just all of a sudden, oh my god, I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
So I actually fired the gun and took off.
I like it. That was a smart decision, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That prevents anything or anyone from chasing you.
But it was the strangest thing I ever experienced, I think.
It could have been something like a mountain lion.
Oh, yeah.
There's lots in that area. Mountain lions are... you can even look on YouTube and watch videos of people who are hiking and there's a mountain lion creeping behind them. And as soon as they see it, it like gets up and just kind of looks dumb. You know what I mean? It's like, you saw me. Like, it's getting ready for the kill. But once you see it, it backs off.
I saw one crossing the road once. I tried to run it over.
Hey, mountain lion, how about 3,000 pounds of steel versus you? Who wins? They're little neck breakers, those guys.
Yeah, I saw him crossing the road, and I was like, "Well, it's a mountain lion. I'm not swerving." I go, "This, I've run over bucks bigger than you."
Well, you aren't exactly in something that could stop easily either.
Yeah.
And if you swerve, you're going to cause more accidents than if you just hit the bastard.
Oh yeah.
But I amend my 3,000 pounds to 10 to 15,000 pounds. But yeah, so there's multiple cases of experienced hikers, people who've done them, basically lived the majority of their lives in the woods, playing in the woods, experiencing the woods, who instantly have his reactions that's completely uncharacteristic.
Oh, exactly. Experienced hunters, or even just like survivalists, like bushmen.
Yeah. I don't care what you think is in the woods. There's no hunter out there who's truly terrified of running into even a mountain lion. If he's carrying around a gun with a reasonable size caliber, he's not afraid of anything out there. He's not afraid of a grizzly. He's not afraid of a mountain lion. He's not afraid of anything. Nothing is going to elicit that sort of response from an experienced hunter. Nothing. But it happens. And there was a case of this woman where she was frozen and she felt like she was glancing around the woods around her too while she can't move, and it looked like the woods were just changed. They were just different. She was in a different place. She was in different woods somewhere else. And that's a frequent story. It feels like your surroundings change when it gets quiet. Like everything is just totally different.
I've heard that before as well, that a boy was trying to get back to camp at some summer camp, and he got lost for a couple days. They did find him alive, but they asked him what happened. He said he was on his way back on a well-known trail that he knew, but he said all of a sudden it was like he was in a different forest, like he had no idea where he was.
There was another case of a small girl who disappeared. I don't know the details because I didn't look into this one because it was a bit more fantastical than this stuff. But they eventually, I think it was a day or two later, they find her down by the creek bed, as per the usual. By all means, people, you need to read up on David Paulides' material and you need to watch his videos. Bodies of water are a big thing. Bodies of water, shoes, and clothing. It's always those things. But she turns up down at the creek bed because they hear a splash. And the parks people who found her saw something run away from her, like a dark shape. And it didn't look like a person because it was dark. It was almost like a shadow running away from her. So they come up to her and they go, "We've been calling for you. If you're right there, why didn't you call back?" "Oh, the wolf wouldn't let me." "Okay. So where's your hat?" "The wolf ate it." "Where's your coat?" "The wolf ate it." It's just weird. It's just weird stuff.
Was it a wolf or a giant moth?
It was obviously a giant moth in a spaceship
Yeah.
with Bigfoot. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. So I looked at a couple of cursory cases. There was one I really wanted to delve into, but the first one we're going to talk about is going to be on April 10th, 1952. It happened at 12 p.m. on lunchtime on a Wednesday. There was, oh, excuse me. Let's get into the other first. It's a little bit earlier than that. 1946, Katherine Van Alst. It's a very famous case. She's 8 years old. She's with her family for a day. They generally go out to a place called Devil's Den Dam, and it's in Arkansas. Yeah, no, that's
Great name.
she's playing with her brothers in the washout there, and Katherine just goes missing. And I got a couple problems with that right away. If you ever been you remember Mark's Lake? You've been to Mark's Lake. If something happens on the other side, somebody whispers something on the other side of the lake, you hear it.
Oh yeah, sound travels great across that lake.
Wonderful. If the rain's coming, you can hear the first drop of rain hit the very end, very tip of the water next to the bank on the other side of the lake, and you can hear it coming towards you. So anyway, she goes missing. There's an extensive search. Tons of people called in. She's found 6 days later, and she's sitting in a cave 7 miles away as the crow flies, 600 feet higher in elevation. And the search and rescue team estimated that Katherine, who was barefoot, would not have been able to cover the 20 or 30 miles of trail distance to reach that location on foot. They just concluded, no way, not in all my experience, is not happening. She told the police she remembered sleeping in a warm, grassy field on the first night, remembers nothing after that. She said she found the cave high in the mountains. She drank water out of a clear pool, and she ate berries to survive.
Well, what's interesting about that one is she's found 7 miles away as the crow flies and 600 feet up higher.
Barefoot.
Yeah, barefoot, and it's multiple miles of trails. Like, the thing is, being found 7 miles away doesn't necessarily mean they just walked 7 miles.
No, that means you walked 30 miles.
Yeah, because you have terrain elevation changes, other areas that are unpassable, and you have to find ways around them.
Yeah. And it's very impassable. People don't realize, like, you and I, when we were younger, we spent a lot of time in the woods. People don't realize how rough the terrain is. If you even want to go 50 feet to the left, sometimes you got to go a mile down the hill to come up 50 feet to your left. It's just the way it works.
Yeah.
If it's even possible. I mean, some things are just flat out not passable without being an experienced mountain climber and having the right gear. It just doesn't happen. And that's just a bunch of kids going through very tame woods. I'm talking about where we were that's some tame stuff. That's some milk toast woods.
Oh, yeah.
You get into some of these national parks and these mountain ranges. That stuff is not. It's nothing to sneeze at, man. That's a big deal terrain there.
Oh, absolutely.
The amount of wildlife in these places is a much more diverse amount of wildlife, and the wildlife itself is, on the predator side, is much more dangerous because it's so far away from the civilization. They don't have to worry about people. But yeah, barefoot, and her feet were fine, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Were her feet messed up?
They're fine. They were dirty, but she'd been walking around her cave without her feet on. But they're not really any cuts to speak of. She was fine. Good old Katherine Van Alst was apparently also a magician somehow, or had an incredible healing ability.
Yeah. Or maybe Bigfoot carried her.
Then maybe Bigfoot carried her.
Bigfoot just carried her up there.
And he's a degen too. I mean, she's 8 years old. He might have wanted her to be his bride.
Uh-oh, red alert. Red alert.
Yeah. Somebody's got to go get him.
Yeah.
We're going to take a rope up into those woods in a pickup truck. I'm dragging that thing out of there. Mm-hmm. So the next case is, this one is going to be involving Edna, Alan, Keith, and Keith's two older brothers. They were visiting Edna's parents in Ritter, Oregon, around Easter. This happened in April 10th, 1952. That was the one I mentioned. It happened exactly at 12 p.m., lunchtime on a Wednesday.
All right.
They were visiting a cattle ranch, and the surrounding area was what you could consider to be cattle land, basically grazing, housing, stuff like that. Edna described the conditions that day as cold with patches of snow on the ground. Keith, he was young. Him and his older brothers had gone to the barn to see with the new calf. Edna, the children's mother, called the boys back to the house for lunch. The two older brothers came back, no Keith. Now here's the first thing that's kind of weird. The little one doesn't come back. And there's always a period of time where no one realizes that there's something wrong. You know what I mean? Just like almost as like someone's like put like a spell over you, and you're just like, oh yeah, this is all my children. Wait, this isn't all my children. 2 minutes later, she asked the brothers, where's Keith? They said, oh, he went around the barn. Okay.
He went the other way around the barn.
Yeah, he went the other way around the barn. Nobody, normal human action says, oh, the little one's walking around to the back of the barn. Somebody should probably watch him. Even kids know that kind of stuff. You got to look after your little brothers and sisters. You know that kind of stuff. They'll get into something. But anyway, I digress. So they go and check it out. And when they got to the barn, he's gone. No trace. He's just gone. So they realized he was gone. And this is early into the afternoon. They already called the appropriate authorities, get a search started. Now, Edna, the mother, noted that it wasn't organized like regular searches. But the people who were doing the searching, they knew what they were doing. They were experienced. It's probably due to how rural they were, too. I mean, you have what you have. They started a line of people and spread out. Each one was within speaking distance and started searching. So at the peak of the search, it was estimated that over 200 people were in the field searching for Keith. Now, remember, this didn't happen in the middle of the woods. This is a field, surrounded by woods, but a field. So when they went to go search, Keith would have had to take off at a full-on sprint just to get to the brush so he couldn't be seen. They're in a field. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So the search continues throughout the night and into the morning. And at a point in the search, at around 3 miles from when he was last seen, they found footprints that had walked through a herd of cattle. That was the only clues they found in regards to Keith's disappearance. Now, on the 11th, around 7 a.m., a searcher found Keith alive in a place called Skull Canyon. roughly. Why are these always so ominously named?
Great name again.
This is Hell's Island. Oh, welcome to my city, murder rape town. You know, it's like, what? So his body was stiff from cold. When they found him, he was face down in the snow with his hat and coat neatly placed beside him. His body, I say it was stiff from the cold. His face had been scratched badly. His clothing was ripped up. They suspect possibly from trying to get through barbed wire from the various properties in the area. He was flown to the nearby hospital. Somebody, did it with their private plane, and he made a full recovery. So it was lunchtime, 12 p.m. when he disappeared, and it was 7 a.m. the next morning when he was found. He would have had to gone 8 to 12 miles in 19 hours. And I do believe that this boy was 2 years old.
8 to 12 miles in 19 hours.
In freezing weather at 2 years old.
Wow.
So his clothing was ripped, his face had the scratches, as mentioned. There was speculated as to what caused it. Law enforcement suspected barbed wire fence, but interviews, Keith himself said a cat scratched him. So they're thinking cougar. And the funny thing is, some experts on cougars were consulted, and scratches on the face is just weird. Cougars will go for the gut or the neck, but I don't know. Could have been anything. The takeaway from this that I got was, how many miles from 2-year-old in freezing weather overnight? Sure. After hour 1, the kid is frightened and hunkered down and crying.
Yeah, you would think, right?
It's just, it doesn't happen like this. Anybody who wants you to believe it happens like this is telling you a tall tale. In my travels looking at these cases, I came across the real king of these cases, and the one that got Paulides really, really into the mainstream, Dennis Martin. This is the big one. So Dennis Martin is a special needs child. He was on a special needs, as in he has an educational delay. He's behind everybody else. It was about 6 months. At this early stage in his life, an educational delay of 6 months is significant, because remember, this kid's, I believe, 6 years old. Yeah, he's 6 years old. So 6 months at 6 years old means he's still kindergarten level, and everybody else is supposed to be in first grade. He weighed 55 pounds. He was just a little guy. And he set out with his father, Bill, his grandfather, Clyde, and his brother, Douglas. They went to the Great Smoky Mountain Park on Friday, June 13th, 1969. It's located in Tennessee. Now, this trip was a common and frequent trip for the family. Their extended family would show up in the Great Smoky Mountain Park, and they would meet and hike around a place called Spence Field. It was a popular meeting spot. Apparently, from what I'm told, beautiful place. We start this off with a little bit of strangeness. Not totally strange, probably coincidence, but during their hike, his father, Clyde, his father, Bill, befriended a gentleman named Clyde Martin. Now, their last name is also Martin. So, and he also had 2 sons with him. It's weird. But anyway, they meet this guy, Clyde Martin, and his sons. And they invited them to stay with them in the Russell Field shelter for the night, because they were still in the process of hiking up to Spence Field. They stay overnight. Everybody's getting along great. The kids are getting along just fine. And the next day, they both set out for Spence Field. The kids decide that they want to scare the adults along the trail, and they're going to hide in the tree line and jump out when they walk by. So they got a little bit of ahead of them. The parents were aware this was going to happen, though, because they're kids and they're young and they're not as covert as they think they are. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's completely obvious. But they could see them pretty much the whole time. Now, Dennis Martin was wearing a red shirt. So the other 3 older kids, they sent him down a different path that would loop around to scare them. And they were afraid that he was going to be seen. They didn't want him to blow it. The parents walk along. They disappeared out of sight, but only ever so briefly. And they jumped out. And they were scared, or they pretended to be scared, whatever. But they noticed that Dennis was nowhere to be seen. The older man, Dennis's grandfather, Clyde, he immediately goes, nope, not even doing this. And he goes, I'm 9 miles that way is a ranger station. I'm going to get him right fucking now. I'm not even playing this game.
Oh, wow. So he jumped right into action immediately.
Yeah, he's like, they couldn't find him. They yelled for him. Bill was trying to find him in the surrounding woods. And Clyde's like, this shit's not normal. There's no way our little special needs 6-year-old is beyond our hearing range by now. It's not been that kind of period of time. He says, nope, hike into the ranger station right now. So he goes straight to the ranger station. He hikes up there. He alerted the park ranger, whose name was Larry Nielsen. More people started getting called in, and the hikers were beginning to be interviewed, and the trails were searched by the other rangers. Naturally, at this point, when they start searching for the boy, what do you think happens?
Bad weather starts.
At this point, a heavy rainstorm slammed into the area, causing flooding. What a coincidence! Again, we get some nice bad weather as soon as people start looking. What a coincidence! But by June 15th, this had turned into the largest search party in the history of the national parks. There were 1,400 searchers.
Wow.
Spence Field was made into a headquarters, and a heliport was set up. Now here's where I start to take a little bit of pause. Things are getting real heated real fast. And people have been called. A colonel in the military has been called. Why?
A colonel in the military.
He retired just some time ago, actually, and he was an honorary brigadier general. But at the time, he was a colonel, and he had been called, and he had sent out the FBI. And 40 Green Berets.
I heard the 40 Green Berets came out and didn't work with anyone. They just were doing their own thing almost.
We'll get to that. Also, in the group searching for rangers, firefighters, police, scouts, etc., etc. I can't even go through that list. I looked at the paragraph of the professions that were there, and it was everything under the sun that matters or takes action or knows how to do things. It was probably one of the largest gathering of skilled individuals you would ever see outside of any kind of wartime thing. Search dogs, and again, the Green Berets. We're going to talk about the Green Berets soon. I looked at a picture of the Green Berets because I had heard some rumors about them. I was wondering if they were armed or unarmed. It looked like in the picture that was released to the press, there were no guns on them. But there was some awfully large packs on those fellas.
Yeah.
See, the Green Berets are supposed to be doing some training nearby. And there was actually a hell of a lot more that were available to come. But I think the colonel, it's reported, at least in the National Park Service report, that the colonel had hands in sending Green Berets. So they look like they were unarmed in the pictures. We'll also come back to that. A lot of searching takes place. Nothing really happens until June 17th. Footprints are found. An Oxford shoe. Same kind that Dennis is wearing. Only one, though. There's one foot that's barefoot, and one foot has a shoe. At this time, the FBI has come in and has set up camp. The leader of the FBI effort is Jim Reich. Remember Jim Reich, because
right.
Jim's going to come up again. So, in total, just to summarize this search effort, 13,000 man hours, 200 flight hours. Now, on July 21st, of course, the searching is continuing to go on. They're following whatever leads. 21st, information is released that a man named Harold Key, an engineer, and his family heard screaming. Harold was on vacation with his family, and from all accounts, a reliable source, not really a questionable guy, never had his nose in trouble before or after this incident. Now, they went to go see what the screaming is about, and they looked, and Mr. Key's son had told the interviewers that he had saw a bear. Mr. Key corrected his son and said it was a man hiding in the bushes, but it seemed like it was a hairy man, like a really wild-looking man. So wild, apparently, that it could look like a bear to a child, which is not really crazy. I mean, they can do that. Now, the time that this happened, on the same day that Dennis went missing, he had seen this, on the same day Dennis went missing. It was about 5 p.m., he estimated the time. Now, the distance from the site where Dennis disappeared from where this sighting was seen, and Dennis had disappeared earlier in the day, was a possible hike. In David Paulides' interview, the father, Bill, had mentioned that him and a ranger had done the hike just to see how much time it would take, and it was possible. They had done the hike in 96 minutes, I believe the number was.
Okay.
It was possible considering the time that they estimated that Dennis disappeared. Now, Mr. Key had also said that along with the screaming and the hairy man, it looked like he had something slung over his shoulder, something child size.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Anyway, Jim Reich. Let's talk about Mr. FBI agent, because I love those guys. When the FBI gets involved, everything goes well. So the agent in charge of the scene, he had a little incident that happens later, but we'll talk about that. He was an interesting individual. He assigned another agent named Agent McCarter. Oh no, McCarter was the ranger, excuse me. There was another gentleman, I don't have his name here, but he was the guy who was supposed to be the handler for Bill and his family, Bill Martin. So he was to keep them away from certain things. He was to filter information so that Jim Reich, uh, he's a man of prestigious status, so he wouldn't have to directly communicate with them. There's another guy there. His name's McCarter. He's a ranger. He's been involved in the search from the beginning. While this nonsense is going on with the FBI, McCarter starts talking about the Green Berets. So the picture that was given to the press, so that was taken by the press, that was printed in the paper, has the Green Berets with these giant backpacks on, a ton of gear, and no weapons. Well, it turns out that that picture is not exactly an accurate representation. The Green Berets that day were armed to the teeth.
Really?
They were fully war decked out. They had their guns. I believe at the time it was probably M16s. They had everything. Spare ammunition. I've never been in the military, but I'm not sure what exactly the rules are when you deploy a military force in a civilian area. I don't know what happens with those army guns. You're supposed to take those with you? I don't know. I don't know how that works.
It doesn't make sense that they would be all kitted out with weaponry if they're just going to help. It's supposed to look like they're there to help look for the kid, right?
Yes.
But they're all twinked out in full kit and weaponry.
They're ready to kill. They're ready to kill. And they got spare ammo to do it in case they got to do some more kill. Their packs are enormous. I took a look at the picture of the packs with them without weapons, and they got ammo. They got ammo in those pouches. You can tell. Anybody who's handled weapons knows where you keep them and what they look like when they're stuffed in there.
They got weapons. They got big packs with their kit and extra ammo, and
spare mags, canteens, rope. They have the whole 9 yards. They have everything they can carry on their back. Those bags look like they weigh 100 pounds apiece.
But here's the thing. If they're going all kitted out with weapons for a search and rescue effort, what else is in the bag other than just ammo and kit?
I don't know.
Think about that one.
Furthermore, why do they need so many weapons? I mean, the kind of gear they're carrying is, I don't want to say, because a lot of people say, like, why do you need weapons like that? Like, obviously, having, if you encounter a mountain lion, having an M16 that's magazine fed is going to be ideal, because you can just, if you don't blow it away at the first shot, you can just keep pulling the trigger. But the whole thing was extremely suspicious. Furthermore, they were not talking to anybody. They weren't cooperating with anybody. They didn't get any reports on what was searched yet. They were doing their own thing, and no one was to approach them or bother them. And they didn't want anything from anyone else. Unless the kid was found, then it would go through the Park Service. Park Service reports that there was only, as far as the Park Service report showed, there was only one communication with them. And they said if somebody found the kid and he was still alive, they would bring in a helicopter and rappel down. And that was it. Other than that, it was just 40 Green Berets in the woods, fully kitted out, ready to fight, doing God knows what. I'm sure the FBI knew, but it's the FBI. I mean, if you really ever have a chance to have the FBI there, it's probably better to not have them there. This McCarter guy revealed later that the FBI had hid vital information from the Martins, the family. They had not told them a lot of the leads that they were getting on what could possibly happen to Dennis. Specifically speaking, there were a couple key incidents. McCarter had reported that he was in an area called West Prong. He had smelled the rotting of a carcass. This was sometime after the disappearance too, so it is an appreciable amount of time. It could have been to the point where it could have been the body rotting, and McCarter said he was very familiar with the smell of the difference between an animal and a human. The smell like a human body. So anyway, McCarter called in the report, said that he was in this area and he smells a carcass. His superiors, which he didn't really say who they were, but remember, this is the FBI, told him it was, quote, probably a crow search in another area.
Wow.
Yeah. The other guy, remember the engineer who said he heard somebody get picked up and was screaming by Mr. Wildman /Bear /Hairy Man?
Yeah, the guy who reported he saw the hairy man.
Yeah. So he later on was headed back to the area again. I don't know why. Maybe he wanted to help out. Maybe he wanted to do whatever. When the FBI intercepted him en route and took him there themselves, they intercepted him while somehow knowing where he was while he was in transit and took him there.
Weird.
Obviously, the boy is never found.
So he was never found.
He was never, no, he was never found. Well, the FBI was there, so naturally he was never found.
Yeah.
Bill Martin, 2 years later, after all this goes down, is at home and he receives a telephone call from an unknown individual who says simply to forget the case, it is now closed. Click.
Doesn't identify himself, doesn't identify which agency he's calling from.
He said it was very threatening.
Hey, forget about this case, bye.
I really wish that we didn't have to consistently deal with these scumbags in our agencies, and they are full of scumbags. So let's talk about Jim Reich, the FBI agent
Alright.
in charge of all this. Jim Reich committed suicide after that.
No shit. When? Like right after?
I don't know. I was looking for that. I couldn't pull it up. I'm aware he did commit suicide.
Well, here's the question. Did he commit suicide or was he suicided?
Suicided, yeah, exactly. This Dennis Martin case is everything weird and everything wrong with what's all this stuff that's going on. With the stonewalling, the federal agencies, the uselessness of the people that are supposed to be there to help. I mean, props to the Rangers. They tried. And some of those Rangers continued and volunteered to do this for another 90 days. They're just like, we'll just keep going out. I don't think that this little boy was killed by the woods. I think this little boy was killed by the system that was in place. I think that if it wasn't so dysfunctional and full of so many incompetence, full of so many morons and so many scumbags, that this little boy might have been pulled out of this woods alive. God knows what happened to him. They found nothing of this boy.
Only the shoe.
Only the shoe.
Where was the shoe found compared to where he disappeared at?
It wasn't the shoe. It was a footprint of him having one shoe on and the other foot. Yeah.
It was footprints, alright.
Yeah. But that was it. That's the case of Dennis Martin. It's ridiculous. There's just no words for the sheer level of incompetence. And then the involvement of the Green Berets fully armed.
Yeah.
To go through the woods. You're going to run into a fox. You need to bring some mortars to blow it up or something. Like, what are you doing?
Does anyone know what the Green Berets were doing there?
They were called in by the colonel. The ranger that contacted them was Ranger Myers. He was the U.S. Forest Service District Ranger in Nalahala. Colonel Kinney, commanding the Special Forces troops in that area. Colonel Kinney requested and obtained permission from the 3rd Army headquarters at Fort Benning, Georgia, to transfer 40 special forces to the search area, who then proceeded to not really participate. That's the story of Dennis Martin.
Unreal.
Yeah. And that's basically what you get with that.
I heard about that one.
The disturbing amount of things, like, you get a lot of stuff in Yellowstone. You get some stuff in the Adirondacks. Shasta Mountain in California is a big one. I think it's California. Yeah, it's California. I'll tell you where the weird zones are, man. And on top of being weird states and just weird places is the Pacific Northwest. That place is a mess. Those woods are messed up, man. There's a lot of weird stuff that comes out of the Pacific Northwest. If you're going hiking in the Pacific Northwest, dude, bring friends and bring guns, because a ton of people go missing there, and it's always the weirdest stuff you'll ever hear in your life from people who were previously never engaged in that sort of behavior or those kind of stories. It's just like total off the wall stuff. In the course of his investigation, David Paulides actually ended up finding a bunch of interesting information about the Park Service. Like, the Park Service has its own SWAT teams.
I was unaware of that.
Yes, they have their own SWAT teams kitted out and geared for combat.
For what exactly?
I didn't know if maybe it was for maybe somebody growing drugs out there. A lot of people do that in the forest. They grow drugs. But at the same time, it's like, there's a lot of weird stuff. The Park Service has their own special agents, like FBI.
When did all that start?
I don't know. And I don't think he ever found out exactly when it started, too, because they're very tight-lipped about that stuff.
Oh. So they didn't just play off the whole, it was the 9/11 stuff started it, which would have been an easy excuse.
I believe this all predates that. It all predates that. Yeah, it would have been a very easy excuse. Oh, terrorists in the woods, But I don't know. There's whatever nonsense is going on in the woods. They're so tight-lipped and weird about it that you know something's going on, just because whenever the government wants to hide something, they always act weird about it. Like, if they just offhand, like, whatever, blah, 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 you wouldn't think that they were necessarily up to something. You would think maybe whatever. But there's just something weird about the response to this stuff. Everything they do with any kind of, like, any kind of direction. Like when they decide to stop being complacent and incompetent, it's usually suspicious and bad, almost always.
Yup.
Like the whole thing that Paulides encountered with the trying to get the documentation, trying to get the numbers of missing people. Oh, we don't keep that information. Changes to, oh, we can't give it to you unless you're an author. Changes to, oh, you got to be published in 3 books. Oh, changes to, oh, well, you got to be in so many libraries. And just moving the goalposts constantly in direct defiance to the law. But hey, whatever.
That's the game they play.
This is a game they play. But I don't know. I thought everyone might find this story pretty interesting. I encourage people to check out David Paulides. He's really got a wealth of information. His books, his videos. You don't even need to purchase the book per se. Head to his YouTube channel or something. Just check it out. He's got the CanAm Missing project. He's got all kinds of stuff. Missing 411. I mean, a lot of them are easily explained away, but there's some that's just weird. Like finding folded clothes in places.
Oh, exactly.
Finding people's shoes next to like decomposing bodies, but the shoes look like they just came out of the factory that day. It's just so weird. It's so weird.
I think both of his movies, The Missing 411, are available on Amazon, and I think they're on YouTube Free Movies.
Yeah.
And on top of that, but one of the things David Paulides said about whatever this is that's disappearing people, here's one of the most ominous things he said. Whatever it is, it never fails.
Yeah.
It's never been seen. It's never been recorded. Not even heard. It has never failed. It's never left evidence behind. It has a 100% success rate. Which if it was a person, they would eventually mess up. They would leave something behind. The person would get away, call out for help or whatever. It's like whatever this is, it can just swoop in and pop. Just take a person and be gone.
And you know, that's what I like about him too, because he says, whatever this is. David Paulides is not a man to be baited in taking something crazy. People have come to David Paulides and said, well, it's obviously Bigfoot. David Paulides says, I'm not going to say what I think it is or what I think it isn't. And he obviously has his own opinions on this stuff. There's people out there who say Bigfoot, people say aliens, people say government conspiracy, people say it's just people getting lost in the woods. David Paulides is not saying, he's just giving you data. He's just giving you data. And he's not giving you his opinion. He's giving you his expert opinion as a former police detective. And he's giving you his rundown, but it's just hard data. And that's why I love the guy. He's very good at what he does.
And here's another thing. Let's say it was Bigfoot, like hypothetically speaking. Let's just say, you know what, it's Bigfoot. But then we have to go back to that 100% success rate. Eventually, Bigfoot's going to F up.
Bigfoot's an idiot.
Exactly.
He gets, if Bigfoot was real, dude gets seen all the time. He sucks, you know, like, and if even like those cases of aliens, aliens, you know, whether they be building the pyramids or whatever you want to believe the aliens had a hand in, or I don't know, that humans can't build that wristwatch. It was obviously made by, you know, the whole thing. Everything's made by aliens now, apparently. But like, they get seen all the time. At least people are saying they see them.
Yeah.
That's not 100% success rate.
Exactly. It's so, and another weird thing about it too is when these mysterious disappearances happen, it's always followed up by bad weather.
Always, without fail.
And if the person is found, they're found in a place that was previously searched.
Multiple times, yeah. There's times when the victim of a disappearance has been found not 300 feet from where they disappeared from.
Wow.
With no memory. There's a lot of disappearances, just someone going hiking, breaking an ankle, falling down a cliff. That stuff happens every day. I mean, we are a planet full of humans, and humans do some stupid stuff. The woman I work with just yesterday sprained her ankle getting out of bed. You know, like, it happens.
Brutal.
But like, there's so much circumstantial evidence that if you had this kind of circumstantial evidence in a murder trial for murder one, you would be comfortable convicting. But when it comes to stuff like this, people not only, even if you had something on video, people say it's fake. Even if you could explain it away as this or that, people wouldn't believe it. There's never an amount of evidence. There's never an amount of proof. There's never an amount of circumstances or situations you could link together that are implausible. Like, a child is not going to travel some 20 odd miles in a little over 12 hours through frigid weather, missing, I don't know, shoes, clothes, whatever the hell they're missing, and end up face down a lake. It's not possible. You get 2-year-olds traveling the kind of distance people can't do in a full day when they're hiking. It's ridiculous. It's absurd, but you're supposed to accept that's normal.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not human intervention, because it very well may be, but.
And there is one interesting thing about it. I've heard a story from rescue workers who do these search and rescue operations.
Oh, dude, they have stories.
I've heard that sometimes when they encounter people that they're looking for, the people will run away from them and hide, and will actively hide from them because...
That came up a couple times here, too.
Yeah, because sometimes they've been lost in the woods for a couple of days or longer, depending on the type of person it is, obviously. But when they're finally caught and they're asked, hey, you know, why were you running from us? They say, well, I thought you were a monster. I thought you were all monsters. I didn't recognize you as rescue personnel.
Yeah. It seems like there's some weird mental stuff going on. That and the reaction, like the lost time thing. I mean, any incident of lost time is basically some kind of mental thing going down. Like, obviously you're not time traveling. It's, you know, your mind is getting altered, whether it be from your own body or whatever, you know, but there's something psychologically that's going on. And it's weird because they're not isolated to these cases, but they're much more frequent out in these places. And there are hot spots, man. There are hot spots of this.
Yeah, I heard the hot spots are generally places where there's boulder fields. That's one. And huckleberries usually has something to do with it, as well as water. Like, just usually water nearby.
I sometimes wonder if the reason these things are happening into the woods is they're linked to something that is, like, not something, but, like, I don't know, whatever, that is, like, pushed out because of too many people in particular places. So, like, maybe the woods is the last refuge. I'm not talking about, like, a monster. I'm talking about, like...
It's a goblin. It's a goblin.
No goblins or ogres. No, but just, like, I don't know, maybe old things. I don't know what other way to put it.
Old entities of some sort.
Like, whatever used to be here.
The old pagan stuff.
Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? And I'm not going to say yes or no. I think people say definitively yes and no are fools. Maybe I'm a fool. I don't know.
Maybe it's trolls. Maybe it's Shrek.
It's the Tommy Knockers. Shrek. Oh, you're in trouble.
Don't even say it.
I'm trying not to. But yeah, I encourage everyone to look up this missing 411 business. Just as a good rule of thumb for anyone going into the woods. Know what you're doing. Defend yourself. And it's usually better to go in a group just for survival purposes. And don't let people walk off alone. Stop being stupid.
Yeah, if you're going to go in the woods, like John said, go with friends. And 2, have some sort of plan, too. Don't just all decide to go and not tell anyone. I forget the guy's name, but the guy who had to saw his own arm off when a boulder crushed it.
Oh, I had heard about that guy.
He went out there and no one had any clue he was out there.
Yeah, good call, buddy.
He didn't tell anyone he was going to be hiking up there. But yeah, tell people I'm going to go into these woods, and if you don't hear from me by noon or 5, something could be wrong. Send help.
Dude, that brings up images of the Forever Alone meme. I'm just thinking of, like, a picture with the Forever Alone guy. Called all my friends, let them know I'm going into the woods. Made 0 calls.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess it's all ogre now.
Oh, here we go.
That's it for this episode of Bell Midnight. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.